10 years ago, JRPGs like Radiant Historia, Shadow Hearts or Trails in the Sky were considered as hidden gems. Nowadays, they're very well known. Any others out there? Well, today I'll show you 10 more JRPGs that I believe are no longer hidden gems either. So let's begin. Number 10. Tactics Ogre. Tactics Ogre is one of the most influential strategy RPGs of all time. It is the godfather of the popular Final Fantasy Tactics, and I feel nowadays that's something a lot of people know, thankfully. For a long time though, it was a really obscure game because its original Super Famicom release never came out of Japan. It wasn't until Atlus localized its port on the PS1 that at least North America knew about it. Still a hidden gem. Years later, Square Enix hired most of the game's key developers, such as director and writer Yasumi Matsuno, so in 2010, Tactics Ogre got its first remake on the PSP. That's the version most people played and know, but still not enough for it to be truly mainstream. Matsuno and Square didn't give up, and a few weeks ago we even got yet another remake called Reborn for modern consoles. This time it finally feels like the game's no longer under the surface and has gained the recognition it deserves. So is this game mainstream now? Perhaps not, but at least it's pretty well known nowadays. Number 9. Romancing Saga. This one shares a similar history to that of Tactics Ogre. Its original release on the Super Famicom never left Japan. After the first trilogy of Saga games known as the Final Fantasy Legend in North America, Square developed Romancing Saga with a different perspective in JRPG mechanics. It had a non-linear gameplay, players could choose one of 8 different characters and embark on an open-world journey. It was a commercial success in Japan, but the world wouldn't know anything about it until Square Enix remade it entirely for the PlayStation 2. Well, it wasn't as successful as the original and people eventually forgot about it. Therefore, it became a hidden gem that only a handful of people knew or even remembered. Its sequels didn't get remakes but instead high-quality remasters that ended up on nearly every modern system. This led to people wondering if the first one will eventually get the same treatment. This was now a decently known and established sub-series outside of Japan. However, instead of remastering the original game, Square Enix decided to remaster the remake on the PS2, now for PS4, PS5, Switch, phones, and Windows. The game isn't out yet as of the making of this video, but it will be released in just a few days. Hopefully that'll increase its popularity. It probably won't be as popular as it is in Japan, but at least people won't see it anymore as a hidden gem. Number 8. The Alliance Alive. I've covered this game multiple times in the past as I'm a big fan of it. Its original release on the 3DS didn't get enough attention, probably because Atlus didn't do the best job in advertising it. All they had was a AA RPG developed by Cattle Call with the creator of Suikoden behind the script. Well, for some reason, people loved it despite its commercial obscurity. NIS America caught wind of this and somehow got the rights from Atlus and Furyu, the publisher in Japan, to remaster the game. A version was then released a few years later on PS4, Switch, Windows, and eventually for phones. I don't think people know how incredible this was and aren't aware of something really important. Sure, other companies had done it before, but the fact remains that porting a game that was originally designed for a dual screen system to just one and completely remastered is definitely no easy feat. Well, thanks to this, The Alliance Alive became a fairly known title. It isn't mainstream, which is the same case as pretty much all JRPGs in this video, but thankfully, just like them, it's gained a lot of reputation and recognition throughout the past few years. Number 7. Folklore. Folklore is perhaps still the most obscure JRPG in this video, but since it's often recommended in Hidden Gems videos and its price shot up a bit during the pandemic, people became even more aware of it. To be honest, I still see it as a hidden gem, but the fact remains that it's lost that title and became more of an underrated game. It's a dark fantasy setting with a mature story with dual protagonists. You need to beat the game with both in order to unlock the final chapter, boss and ending. It gained some popularity because it used the PS3 6-axis feature on the controller. You needed to shake it towards you to absorb the enemy's souls that you will use to summon their skills to exploit weaknesses, including those of the bosses. So it was one of the very few PS3 games that used this feature. I think it's a pretty unique experience, even though it forces the player to do two very similar playthroughs in order to complete the game. Still, I think it's worth it because of its narrative, graphics and visual design. It's a beautiful game to be honest, but maybe not for everybody. That and its PS3 exclusivity are the reasons why a lot of people still haven't played it, but at least they are nowadays more aware of it. Number 6. Jeanne d'Arc. Just like Folklore or Shadow Hearts for example, Jeanne d'Arc began appearing in so many different hidden gems videos that people became naturally aware of it. A strategy RPG based on the legend of Joan of Arc, pretty much its anime version, but very well done and with a serious and dramatic tone. I highly recommend this game despite the fact that it broke my heart with a tragic scene late in the story. It's honestly perfect for beginners as it holds your hand from the start and gradually becomes more challenging, but never anything crazy. It's grindy alright, but not as much as many other strategy RPGs of its era. The game's still an exclusive to the PSP and it was very cheap for a long time, until a few years ago its price went up, but it's still pretty affordable. It was developed by Level 5, one of their very first games actually, so back then it gained some notoriety for that, but Sony didn't do enough to promote it well, so it could compete with other giants like Fire Emblem or Final Fantasy Tactics. However, like I mentioned, time went on, more and more gamers found out about it, and like me, started recommending it at every opportunity. Today, I think it's a well-known game, maybe a tad obscure still, but not as other hidden gems on the PSP. When people search for strategy RPGs on the console, this is one of the first that immediately pops up, and it should, since it's one of the best out there. Number 5. Muramasa the Demon Blade. Vanillaware started in the early 2000s when designer George Kamitami and others quit Atlus after working on Princess Crown on the Sega Saturn. Kamitami wanted to make a spiritual successor to that game with much better gameplay, story, visuals and controls. The result was Odin Sphere on the PlayStation 2, ironically published by Atlus. It got delayed a bit, so Vanillaware's second project, a real-time strategy tower defense type of game called Grim Grimoire, came out first, published by NIS America. For reasons that I can't find on the internet though, Vanillaware's next game was Muramasa the Demon Blade, exclusive to the Wii. The game made some noise for sure since it was praised for its fast-paced action and its extremely beautiful visuals. However, it remained obscure for a long time and people eventually forgot about it. A PS Vita remaster came out some years later, and I'd say it finally found its audience, its rightful home, because the game looked absolutely stunning on that sweet OLED screen. Eventually, Vanillaware became more famous with successful releases such as Dragon's Crown and an amazing remaster of Odin Sphere. I won't say that Muramasa is mainstream and not as well known as the aforementioned titles, but I think it's at least one of the most beloved, praised and popular games on the PS Vita. But since the Vita failed, I hope this game gets ported if at least to the PlayStation 4, else it'll become a forgotten gem once again. Number 4. Shin Megami Tensei Devil Summoner 1 and 2. These two games are very expensive and rare today. They aren't exclusive to the PS2 though, as they can be found digitally on the PS3 store. They were very popular in Japan, just not enough to be considered mainstream. Several other S&T games easily obscured them and the world forgot about them. The main character, Raido Kusunoha, featured in Soul Hackers, a game that people are perhaps more familiar with nowadays, especially because of its 3DS release, and of course its sequel released a few months ago. Then, Nocturne was remastered, turned its guest character Dante into a DLC, and the canon appearance became Raido. I don't know why Atlus decided to advertise this character in these games again, when they aren't doing anything at all with its two own games. but it is thanks to these appearances that more gamers became aware of their existence. Besides, as I stated about a minute ago, they've been pretty rare for a while. If anything, and most people know them for that, but hey, at least they do. So, hidden gems? Nah, not anymore. Dare I say, nearly nothing from the SMT universe is obscure anymore, considering its huge popularity nowadays. Devil Summoner 1 and 2 might still be on the dark spectrum, but at least they're nowhere near as hidden as they once were. God damn it, Atlus, bring these two games back. Number 3, Baten Kaitos and Baten Kaitos Origins. Yes, it's pronounced Baten Kaitos. I think the reason why more people know about these two is because there are barely any JRPGs on the GameCube, so they're definitely not hard to find. We gotta understand first that the GameCube wasn't very appreciated during its first several years. Truth be told, it never gained popular renown until a few years ago, hence the reason why a lot of its games went up in price considerably. Baten Kaitos and its prequel were always obscure, hidden gems that a lot of fans strongly recommended. The first game is a friggin' masterpiece in my opinion, developed by Tree Crescendo and Monolith Soft. However, because of its weird name and the system it had been released on, obscurity came over it, especially on Origins since it was released near the end of the console's lifespan. Nowadays, thanks to the internet, they're both pretty well known. People still wonder why the hell Bandai Namco refuses to bring them back, as they're only getting forgotten on a console that wasn't known for its RPGs. But if Xeno Saga and some major Tales games are still abandoned at the bottom of the ocean, I highly doubt we'll see remasters of these two. Nevertheless, they aren't as obscure as they were before. If anything, they are somewhat popular. But I really do believe it's mainly thanks to people searching for RPGs on the GameCube, these two showing up among the best in nearly every list out there. Yes, including mine. Number 2, the Atelier Series. Atelier is a tricky one, as I still believe there's a bunch of titles buried in the sand out there. Only a few though, the huge majority of them is very well known today. I blame Risa, that simple, cheerful and thick character brought mainstream attention to the rest. So yeah, I think this is a series that has finally established itself as one of the most popular worldwide, especially in Japan. It's been there since the mid-90s and it struggled fiercely through its first 20 years to make a true name out of itself in the West. Nearly all of them were pretty much hidden gems since advertisement was poor, and let's face it, none of them were everyone's cup of tea. Colorful, girly, shiny, geeky, silly, there just wasn't a big enough market out there for them. But since they were pretty successful in Japan, companies like NIS America and Koei Tecmo started promoting them more and more, up to the point where there's an Atelier game almost every year, and it's been that way almost since its inception. It's incredible how it's still going today, stronger than ever, and I'm pretty sure it will continue to do so. Sure, there are still forgotten and obscure titles like Annie on the Nintendo DS or the Iris Trilogy on the PS2, but I can guarantee more people know about them than 5 or 10 years ago. Number 1, the Ys series. Ys is mainstream already, it's really popular and its fame has increased substantially over the past few years, thanks to its latest releases. Lacrimosa of Dana was a massive critical success and it's been praised to death, with a lot of people even calling it Falcom's masterpiece. I agree with that statement. I'm happy this series finally got the attention it absolutely deserved, as it's the godfather of action RPGs and has been influencing everything since the mid-80s. So of course we can safely say the latest releases are just not hidden gems, and some that were, like Origin or Napish Team for example, are no longer hiding underground. Hell, Origin's freaking everywhere, even on the Xbox One! I admit they aren't as popular or mainstream as 8 or 9, which are the best ones in the series in my opinion, but they're definitely not obscure anymore. If anything, some are still kind of underrated, but I'm happy to say that the success of the last releases made people turn their attention to the rest of the series right afterwards. Those are my 10 JRPGs that I personally believe are not hidden gems anymore. Not that there's anything bad with being a hidden gem though, but the fact is that developers and publishers don't want their games to be one. Everyone wants their own work to succeed, and while none of these JRPGs are really mainstream or were very commercially successful back then, at least way more people are aware of them today. Thanks for watching, don't forget to subscribe and share this video with your friends. See you next time!